We wanted to do a weekend for love, luxury vacation and marriage retreat, is that we see couples break up. I mean, couples who are surprising. I'm still surprised that my grandparents, Dewayne, Michelle, and Mecca, after like 30 years, like they broke up, right? And that was crazy to our family, and it was scary because you think that you built up this inventory. You think that you've built up all this momentum that after 30 years, what have you not seen? And so even look at like celebrity couples. Like, what celebrity couples have y'all seen? Like, I think Anthony Anderson and his wife. That was surprising to me.
Yes, Devon and Megan. That was very surprising.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw an interview with Shaquille O'Neal, and he was talking about his marriage to Shawnee. And the host asked him, hey, divorce is a two-way street. What role did you play and what role did she play? And he said she didn't play anything. Right. Like it was all him, that he failed to make the accommodation, the adjustment to his wife soon enough to be able to save the marriage. Right. So let me ask you all just a general question. Like, first of all, what do y'all think causes marriages to break up today?
I think it's become super easy for couples just to say we quit. I think it's because people see it, that there's so many options out there, even though there's not. They believe that, and everybody wants things quick. They want to have the changes quick, and it seems to be a lot more options, even though there's not. When that's put out there, people are more likely to go their separate ways. But what I found from talking to women that have separated is it's not as easy as people make it out to be. Dating, the grass is not always greener.
Should have brought that plate to that man.
So we got married at 22 and 25, and who we are now at 44 and 47, we're not the same. So I can own, we've had to grow up together in a way. And I think sometimes as couples grow up, if you're not staying connected and like rediscovering one another and supporting that growth, I can see how after 20 years, 30 years, you're like,
tired.
I just can't do this anymore. Like,
Stop
I'm just done.
on the left side of your mouth.
Well, that's actually one of my prayers, Michelle, even at night for us, is that we continue to grow together. Because I would hope that I'm not the same person that I was in my 20s, that I'm in my 30s, that I'm in my 40s. But the hope and prayer is that we actually grow together in this marriage.
We're not taught that.
Absolutely.
Right.
We're taught it's going to always be the same. Somehow you think where you started at is where you're going to finish at, just with all the flowers and unicorns going on around you. But that's not how it happens.
Or it's happily ever after. You get married and you live happily ever after. Like, that's the end of the story instead of the beginning of the story.
Yeah, and I think you don't get enough premarital counseling. Right?
Absolutely.
Like, we have these mountain of expectations. Like, y'all just name them. Like, what are some of the expectations? A great lover. I need a great lover.
Yes.
I need
provider.
I need a
provider.
I knew women were going to say that, right? All right. Provider.
Provider.
I need a prayer warrior, being in ministry. These are things you think in your head, right? How's she supposed to know? I hope she knows how to pray, right?
You need a cook.
Know her scripture. Know how to cook. You mentioned that. I'm glad we're going back to that. My expectation, I didn't even know Mecca could cook, Dewayne.
He didn't.
Right? I was like, man, I got everything I prayed for except that, right? And I was like, well, maybe she can learn, right? Because the first 5 dates, she didn't cook. She didn't make any indication.
I told him I can kind of cook, but that's because I was reading this book and it said, don't put everything out there. So I said, I can kind of cook knowing that I can throw down, right? Because I wanted him to court me. I needed to make sure that he courted me in the process, because I'm big on that as well for single women that are listening to this podcast, is that you have to make sure that a man will court you first. He shouldn't be at your house the second date.
That's real. I mean, I flexed on her. I was like, you want to go to restaurants? Take you to restaurants you've never been to before, right?
He did.
Right? And she's like, oh, this is nice, all right? But when she finally cooked, I was pleasantly surprised, because the expectation in my family, my mom can cook. Right. I'm talking about 100 people over the house, right? Tuskegee, Alabama in the building. You know what I'm saying?
Fed.
Yeah. My cousins can cook. Every woman in my cooking and women in my family. That's the same thing. That's the same word, right? So not only did Mecca have to cook, she had to be able to host. You have to be able to. We host Easter.
Yeah, I enjoy hosting, and so that's also knowing your partner. But again, bringing it back to expectations, right? People have expectations, and when those expectations are not met, than Bob that you're working with that's like, oh, you look so beautiful today, Michelle. It's like, oh, my husband hasn't even told me today that I look beautiful.
You look good, girl.
Thank you, baby.
Yeah.
So you have to celebrate your partner in your own household first, because I feel like there are more distractions, especially, Michelle, like we were talking about, women are doing so much more. So where it used to be where the husband was doing all the traveling, going out, making business deals, the wives are doing the exact same, and they have just as much temptation, if not more, as men.
Yeah. And I think also expectations change. Like it can also feel as though, okay, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and now your partner wants something new. They want something different. You know, maybe your wife was at home all these years. Well, now she wants a career. Now she wants, and so it's also adapting to change.
Right.
Instead of it feeling like, well, this is how it's always been and this is how it has to stay.
I had to get out the road. She told me that for kids and the family she wanted to have, probably midway, and we waited that 5-year mark. And I traveled a lot. I brought her to Puerto Rico twice while I was down there working, you know, and I've traveled quite a bit.
That's a boss move, by the way.
You know, and it wasn't a question. She made the request, and then if it was going to happen.
I made the request, or you couldn't
She's
stand
like,
being away from
She's
me.
like, you're going to, I'm coming, so get ready.
No, was that it, or was it, I miss you, baby. I can't stand being
Making
away
you
from
look
you.
soft, bro.
Well, that's what the guys around me believe, but you know, I had to make her think that.
Okay.
Well, so what was the biggest accommodation y'all had to make in y'all marriage? And we're using the word accommodation. I didn't even tell y'all that I'm also a psychologist. That's the main thing that I do. And in the research, accommodation is an intentional change that you make in your marriage, almost thinking like points. Like you have to have points that are even, mutual satisfaction in the marriage. It can't just be one person's happier in the marriage and the other person's over here suffering. Forget what you've heard in the church. Forget what you've heard about gender roles. Both people, if you want a happy marriage, have to be happy. And so you have to accommodate. So what would we say the biggest accommodation that you've had to make in your marriage? Like what need to be thrown away?
So I would say the biggest accommodation for me was, at the time I was living my Sex in the City lifestyle with my girlfriends. I wasn't doing a whole bunch of sex, and I'm not saying that at all.
I told you she was dating a rapper.
Definitely,
definitely
a professional woman here. But so I would say for me, the biggest thing that I had to accommodate was moving from the city life to being out in the suburbs. That was definitely a change for me, a complete change. And then the second thing that I would say was one of the biggest accommodations is, one day, and we had been talking about it, Alduan came home and said, I want to become a minister and I'm going to move forward on it. And actually there's an interview tomorrow with different people within the church. For me to get accepted into this program, you have to be a part of the interviewing process. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't sign up to be a minister. So why am I having to interview for this? But it was an accommodation I made for him because that was his dream. That was his desire.
You know, it's funny, you know, when you go into ministry, I went like super religion. I was like, no more Trey Songz, no more T-Pain, no more of them short dresses in church. You're going to have to wear a shawl, right? You know, when we went to a club, I was like, oh, I see demons in here, you know. And I used to be the club guy, right? I used to be banging it, right? It was just like in one day. But the Lord really spoke to me, and I was like, this is something I need to be called to do. So I appreciate you making that accommodation.
You're very welcome.
But you know what? I had one in the bank, though, because the biggest accommodation I had to make was that Mecca is a bodybuilder, like a fitness competitor.
Yes, former NPC competitor.
Right.
Yes.
You see how she threw that out there,
Former.
right?
Yes.
So it was like dating an athlete, right? So we're going out to dinner, and she had the jug of water, right? It was like,
I would
bro,
literally bring my own food. I would eat my own food in the car, and then I would eat like something just small inside the restaurant because I had to eat every 2 hours. I didn't want to eat anybody else's food. I wanted to win.
Right.
If I'm
It
doing
was
all
like
this work,
being
I'm gonna
married to
win.
Kobe. And one day she bumped into me in the kitchen and was like, bruh, I was like, okay, this is the end of this. Right. All right. But one of the things, the combination I had to make was like, is she Mecca? Or is she the wife that I want her to be? Did you marry Mecca or this vision of this wife? And so you can think about these going together, me going in ministry, and my wife is a bikini fitness competitor, right? The other minister's like, bro, your wife is fine, right? my mom and dad are like, my God, right? All right. But when I met Mecca, she was in pageants. That's why I dated her, because she's just unapologetically, I think, hardcore California peach who Mecca is. And I had to make a decision. Like, embrace her dreams. All right. If she's going to follow ministry, who am I to tell her who to be? Even though it makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right.
But to make a long story short, I wasn't going to go to the beefing. I wasn't going to go to the final competition because she kept winning.
And that would have been a problem.
She kept winning. I was like, okay, for a season. She kept winning. I was like, Lord, I hope I'll be in the back and win. First place. Oh, man, let this end, right? Get my wife back, right? So, but her dad went. Her dad went, and it was super awkward because we're both on the front row looking at her in the bikini, right? I was like, this is so awkward, right? And her dad turned to me. We have the same birthday, by the way. He said, son, I hooked you up, didn't I? Oh man, so we had to make accommodations in our marriage. But let me throw this out to married couples and single people, because y'all have what? It's just 21 or 23?
21.
21 years in the game,
Yeah.
right? How many we have?
We've been married for 8 years this year.
Could have been 13. Could have been 13.
It could
if
have
she
been
was
13.
married, right? I always
We've
want
been
to say
together
that.
for
If you-
13.
Subscribe to our plan.
Right.
we could have had more receipts like the Gaineys, but thanks a lot for that. Anyway, what advice would you for a young married man? All right, let's start with the ladies. Young married woman. What advice would you give her, like going into marriage? One piece.
One piece. That's difficult. We kind of had a similar
About accommodation.
Right. We had a similar situation where, when we got married, I worked a 9 to 5, and then along the way decided I wanted to start my own business, and, both financially as well as just like not being physically present as much as I would have liked. Like my family had to sacrifice in order for me to have that dream. And so, people see the success on the end, but they don't see the grind that comes with it. And certainly Dewayne had to make that accommodation to supporting me, for me to get to where I am today. I think what I would give to young married women is part of it is the journey, right? So who you are today is not who you're going to be, and giving yourself the space and the grace to grow through that journey, but being able to communicate and be transparent and vulnerable. And that sounds so easy in marriage, but when it's going to spark a fight or it's going to cause, the conflict, just like with you, like you knew he didn't like it,
Right.
but you really wanted it. And so that resentment starts to grow if you don't truly communicate your desire and like come to an agreement in how that can work, how you can both coexist in your dreams and be there for each other. I know for us, therapy has been vital because we don't always have the language. It's like every time we start trying to talk about it, it turns into an argument, and then we retreat to our corners, and it just feels like we're having the same argument over and over, and nothing's really getting resolved.
I'm gonna pause you right there because you
I
said
would say I would pause
you
too for a
said
second
a
too.
therapy word.
Right.
Whose idea was it to go to therapy?
It's probably mine initially.
And again, I go back to what I said earlier. I didn't know what I needed to know. All I knew was I felt some kind of way, and feeling those types of feelings toward my wife, who wasn't sure what she wanted to do with her life, but I had to be supportive. How do you cope with that?
What made you say yes? Because there are men out there like, nah, I'm not doing therapy. We're going to keep our business in-house. We're going to figure it out together.
Right.
I'm not telling people. I'm not going to do this. You can do this by yourself if you want to, right?
Well, I've always been an oversharer. Even in church, Sunday school, she had to pull my, you tell them too much. Don't give all our business out. I don't want my business in the streets. So, I'm if anybody's got some better advice and can give me advice on what I can do to do better, I'm willing to listen. I ain't always say I'm ready to practice, but I'm always willing to listen.
I appreciate you sharing that because there are men who identify with just how you carry yourself and who you are. Because you were laid back alpha male. I'm just going to go ahead and I give you your receipts, my brother, right?
I appreciate it.
That needed to hear that, right? So...
But the other thing is I want to tap back in with Michelle because I think that there's some women probably listening in right now where they can understand and appreciate your story. And so I want to go back to it really quickly because I know you personally, right? So you were doing a 9 to 5 as a...
I was a paralegal.
Paralegal,
making
right?
really good money.
With
money. Insurance benefits.
With really good health benefits. And we know entrepreneurship, health benefits, and benefits at a company is completely different, right?
Yeah.
So you were doing that as a paralegal. But then also you then stepped out and said, I need some time to focus on my career. Now, Michelle, because I'm going to brag on her because she's not going to brag on herself, and that's what friends do. But Michelle is one of the top luxury event planners in the United States, one of the most sought after event planners. But there is a process, Michelle, that goes from leaving your comfortable 9 to 5 that's helping to take care of your family, the partnership there, and then becoming who you are today. That period of time frame, the accommodation that it took within your marriage, right?
Yes.
Was what? What did that look like?
I mean, it nearly broke us. And I think hindsight is 20/20, right?
Right.
So I see all the mistakes I made and how I would have done it differently. But going through it, I didn't know. Like, I knew that because I with my business, I was doing it part-time while a full-time job with 2 kids at that point. And knew that in order to really take my business to the next level, I had to go full time with it.
Right.
I thought I had a plan and how that could work and financially for us, have another revenue stream that could help supplement, but it didn't go to plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't happen the way that it was supposed to. Mm-hmm. And so that meant the bulk of the financial burden fell on Dewayne's shoulders. Mm-hmm. And then that stress created resentment in him,
which is a big word in a
that
marriage. Yeah,
built up over time, and we weren't in sync and we weren't working together. And I'm someone who I love what I do, and so especially when things aren't good at home, I can just pour myself into work because that's where I feel validated. That's where I feel good. And then that creates more stress and tension.
Knowing what
in
you
our
know
marriage.
right now, what would you what would you have pivoted into something different? I know God works the way he works, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
I think I would have learned better how to operate a business. I did the business that I did because I had a passion for it and love, but passion doesn't pay the bills. And I would have set up a better system of how to operate a business. Like I didn't get a degree in business. I didn't know about accounting, marketing, like all the things that you have to do outside of what you love to do. But I did eventually find a system and, found a book called Profit First that just changed my life and how to run the finances. But, I was like, if I came home one more time with an IRS bill.
Don't say time.
One more year.
Dwayne, you laid back. But,
Let's be clear.
There are a lot of women out there, especially in our community, that go get the bag, right? I mean, we start talking about, and I'm going to say black girl magic only for the term. I know y'all fully grown women, all right? That make it happen, right? I mean, and we support our wives, right? What was that like? What was that like for you as far as, is there anything you would have done differently or you had to learn to be able to accommodate a talented wife?
Right, because now you traveling the world with Michelle, right? Getting all those perks and benefits.
True. I can't deny that.
Right.
The perks have unfolded after the trials and the tests. And, before the event planning was the real estate license, and before that,
tell on it, bro.
It was a little bit. It wasn't a linear path. It was more of, this is what I think I want to do, and then later, no, that's not working. Let me go try this, and so all of this happened, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ride or die with you. Let's do it together, but can we make up our mind and just go with one thing? Because the finances can't be, don't come from nowhere. We got to pay these bills, and they're starting to build up. So over the years, she had a talent, and I tell you, a vision, and that's one thing I can give her credit for. Her vision far exceeded mine. I do look at things long term, but I live in the present, and I believe most men do. But my wife had a vision of what she wanted to be. She didn't know how she was going to get there, and that's where we had to get outside help to get us comfortably to navigate those rough waters that we had to deal with. So she got there, and then things now, we're reaping the benefits because you had to be patient.
I mean, and you all are, very laid back. When you own your own company, I mean, you built it from the ground up. I mean, you were, when you were going from state to state, you not only taking care of business, but you were supervising an entire company.
Yeah.
And,
So let's be clear. It was a two entrepreneur household.
Right.
You talk about faith. Like, God, we both can't be broke at the same time
Right.
and have a roof over our heads.
Right. Right.
It's a different faith walk.
Yeah.
But one thing, and I'll say this because it's on my spirit though, is Alduan has also mentioned to me when someone has a household that is unkept, right? Or you see a you gave me the analogy. You said that you were out at a basketball game. You guys came out of the basketball game. There was a man and his children and the wife that was outside on the curb asking for money. And half the men leaving the game was just like, why would you?
All the men.
All the men said what? They
Not giving him any money?
Don't give him any money because that man should not have his family out there on the curb like that. So I feel like there's a different set of expectation.
Yeah.
Because if someone says, oh, Michelle's business or Mecca's business didn't go well, they're like, oh, okay, what needs to happen? If it's the husband, it's like, what you doing next? What needs to happen?
Right.
So there is this amount of pressure that men have to make sure that their household is running and operating regardless of what's going on.
You know, one thing we're talking about on the ride over is like this whole old school, new school, like the gender roles have changed, right? And how that gets confusing. Like we were talking about this conversation where this relationship expert was talking about how men have to have $150,000 and all this kind of stuff. And multiple degrees, and how women were running circles around men, and while some of that is straight valid by facts, black women are killing it, right, and we're proud of it. But being able to negotiate the gender roles as that changes, right, and as far as what you do, so. We start talking about, just accommodations to get back on point, is that you have to start making adjustments, right? You start what you thought, I'm not finna cook, right? When I'm at home with 3 kids, right? Like our daughter was sick and I was working from home and she was gone, right? Handling business with Michelle, right? And I was like, don't you want to go to school? Right? Can't you suck up this stomach bug? I know you threw up 5 times, girl, but just come on through.
But he went into mode of taking care of because she had to have breakfast. Right. She had to be taken care of. And so he was multitasking, doing his business and also taking care of a sick child.
Right. And 3-month-old, picking him up. Right? I didn't know where we dropped him off.
Yeah, he didn't even know where the daycare was.
Right.
And I think maybe just to like round up this idea, I know for us, we got caught in the trap of, almost the point system. You did this, now I do this. Or you didn't cook, so now I'm not going to do this. Or the blame game. You're to blame because, things didn't happen the way that they should have. One thing that we learned in therapy is because we love each other, I want to see Dewayne happy. I want to see him win. And he wants to do the same for me. So how can I be his problem-solving partner? How can I help him win and be healthy and whole and happy? And he does the same for me. So that means, he supports me, and sometimes he's going to cook. And that means I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to limit the amount of work that I do. I'm going to take on a limited number of events so I can be more present in our life. And I think it's, you do that out of love and support for one another, and that's how you find the balance.
I mean, that's great advice. Michelle, what you just talked about, and Dewayne, with mutual satisfaction. We have to both be happy, which means that we have to both talk about what makes us happy so that neither one of us is sacrificing to the point where we're losing ourselves.
Right.
We're sacrificing to the point where we're meeting one another, where we are. So that's the advice. Did you want to add anything, Matt, on that?
No, I think that it's important for couples to be open to making the changes. And I think that's the difference between a wife and a girlfriend. Not every person is ready to be a wife, because that big word accommodating, compromising, that's what it takes to be married.
I know I'm gonna stir the pot, but I don't like this term boss chick, right? So could you say it's the difference between a wife and a boss chick?
So I think that there's a negative connotation, because the boss chick term is like, okay, she has it all, and guess what? She don't need no man. Right? That's what a lot of men think about. But the fact of the matter is that I love being married. And so if you have to know, I never forget, one of my hairstylists told me, he said, you can't wear the pants and wear the skirt, Mecca. And you have to pick one. And so it's also about knowing the roles that you should play within your marriage. And so that's not a term that I take on.
So give them the advice. What's the advice?
Well, and just to your point also, it can be a good thing for you. If I did not have Dewayne to balance me out, I would be so overworked and overstressed. I need that balance. I need someone to say, okay, it's enough. Let's not do anymore.
Right.
Let's live today. Let's live in the moment. It actually is helpful to me. So I need that counterbalance to my go. And it makes for a happier life. I'm thankful for that, instead of someone who's like, just do whatever, go whatever, because I would be miserable.
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, like for me, I think as long as we were married a long time, you know how much Mecca made. Right?
That's because there's a saying, I believe, that's where I hear women say, where it's like,
what's yours is mine,
right,
what's mine is
yours. Yeah, like your money is my money,
Bro,
and my money is my money, right? And there are quite a few households that operate that way, where it's like, okay, well, whatever you make, but there are couples that come together and they really work on finances.
That's a whole other show.
Yeah, her grandmother.
That's a whole other show.
I'm a bow tie woman, but her grandmother told her to
finances.
keep some for her, and then and we got into an argument about that. And
I
I love her grandma,
but I was in case.
Yes. So when you said the skirt and the pants, we're talking about traditional roles. When I saw how much she made, I was like, I'm finna retire, right? I'm finna chill. Why am I working so hard, girl? I thought come on, like you held out a little too much, right? And so we're able to talk about how that balances me out to take more risk, right? I'm finna write a book, right? One day I stayed home, Dewayne, for like 3 days, writing a book. Mecca was getting I told her I'd quit. I told her, I'm not being a doctor anymore. I quit. I'm finna go in for this book all off.
I was like, what are you doing?
I was like,
still here.
I said, girl, you making a bag. I'm finna write a book, right? She got so mad. I wasn't raised like this. Anyway, but let's